Today is January 13th, 2025, with the VIHE online, and we're studying Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 7, text 32 to 44. Hari sarveshu bhuteshu bhagavan asta ishvaraha iti bhutani manasa kamastair sadhu manayet. One should always remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his localized representation as the Paramatma, who is situated in the core of every living entity's heart. Thus, one should offer respects to every living entity according to that living entity's position or manifestation. Evam nirjita sadvargai kriyate bhaktir ishvare vasudeve bhagavati yaya samla bate ratihi. By these activities, as mentioned above, one is able to cut down the influence of the enemies, namely lust, anger, greed, illusion, madness, and jealousy. And when thus situated, one can render service to the Supreme Lord. In this way, one surely attains the platform of loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nishamya karmani gunan atulyan Viryani lila tanubi kritani yad aitihar shotpula kashrugad gadam protkanta udgayati rori nityati. One who is situated in devotional service is certainly the controller of his senses, and thus he is a liberated person. When such a liberated person, the pure devotee, hears of the transcendental qualities and activities of the Lord's incarnations for the performance of various pastimes, his hair stands on end on his body, tears fall from his eyes, and in his spiritual realization, his voice falters. Sometimes he very openly dances, sometimes he sings loudly, and sometimes he cries. Thus he expresses his transcendental jubilation. Yada graha grasta eva kvachid datsyat yak Yakrandate dayayati vandate janam muhu swasan vakti harer jagat pate narayane jatma matir gata chapaha. When a devotee becomes like a person haunted by a ghost, he laughs and very loudly chants about the qualities of the Lord. Sometimes he sits to perform meditation, and he offers respects to every living entity, considering him a devotee of the Lord. Constantly breathing very heavily, he becomes careless of social etiquette and loudly chants like a madman, Hare Krishna, oh my Lord, oh Master of the universe. It's interesting, in the Sanskrit, it's Hare Jagatpate Narayana. Tadapuman mukta samasta bandhanas tadbhava banan ukritasaya Nirgada bijan shayo mahiyasa bhakti prayogena samet jedhok sajam. The devotee is thus freed from all material contamination because he constantly thinks of the Lord's pastimes and because his mind and body have been converted to spiritual qualities. Because of his intense devotional service, his ignorance, material consciousness, and all kinds of material desires are completely burnt to ashes. This is the stage at which one can achieve the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. Adhok sajalambam itas subatmana sharirina samsriti chakrashatatam tad brahma nirvana sukham vidur buddhas tato bhajadvam riddaye ridishvaram. The real problem of life is the repetition of birth and death, which is like a wheel rolling repeatedly up and down. The wheel, however, completely stops when one is in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, by the transcendental bliss realized from constant engagement in devotional service, one is completely liberated from material existence. All learned men know this. Therefore, my dear friends, O sons of the Asuras, immediately begin meditating upon and worshiping the super soul within everyone's heart. Koti prayasho surabalaka harer upasane swe ridi chidravatsata swasyatamana sakyur ashesha dehinam samanyata kim vishayo padada nai. O my friends, sons of the Asuras, the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his super soul feature always exists within the cores of the hearts of all living entities. Indeed, he is the well-wisher and friend of all living entities, and there is no difficulty in worshiping the Lord. Why then should people not engage in his devotional service? Why are they so addicted to unnecessarily producing artificial paraphernalia for sense gratification? Raya kalatram pashava sutadayo griha mati kunjara kosha bhutaya sarve rita kama kshana bagura yusa kurvanti martyasya kiyat priyam chalaha. One's riches, beautiful wife and female friends, one's sons and daughters, one's residence, one's domestic animals like cows, elephants, and horses, one's treasury, economic development, and sense gratification. Indeed, even the lifetime in which one can enjoy all these material opulences are certainly temporary and flickering. Since the opportunity of human life is temporary, what benefit can these material opulences give to a sensible man who has understood himself to be eternal? Evam hiloka kratubi krita ami Kshayishnava sati shaya nanir malaha tasmad adrisha shruta dushanam param bhaktyo tayesham bhajatatmalabhaye. It is learned from Vedic literature that by performing great sacrifices, one may elevate himself to the heavenly planets. However, although life on the heavenly planets is hundreds and thousands of times more comfortable than life on earth, the heavenly planets are not pure, nirmalam, or free from the taint of material existence. The heavenly planets are also temporary, and therefore they are not the goal of life. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, has never been seen or heard to possess inebriety. Consequently, for your own benefit and self-realization, you must worship the Lord with great devotion, as described in the revealed scriptures. Yad arta iha karmani vidvan man yaksharing naraha karot yuto viparyasam amogam vindate palam. A materialistic person, thinking himself very advanced in intelligence, continually acts for economic development. But again and again, as enunciated in the Vedas, he is frustrated by material activities, either in this life or in the next. Indeed, the results one obtains are inevitably the opposite of those one desires. Very famous verse. Sukhaya dukkha mokshaya sankalpa iya karmina sadapnoti haya dukkham anihaya sukhavrita. In this material world, every materialist desires to achieve happiness and diminishes distress, and therefore he acts accordingly. Actually, however, one is happy as long as one does not endeavor for happiness. As soon as one begins his activity for happiness, his condition of distress begins. So these two things are very often quoted. The results one obtains are inevitably the opposite of what one desires, and that one is happy as long as one does not endeavor for happiness. As soon as one begins his activities for happiness, his conditions of distress begin. Very profound statements. Often quoted. Kaman kamayate kamayar yad artam ihapurushaha savai dehas tupadakyo banguro yat bangaro yat upadaiticha. A living entity desires the comfort for his body and makes many plans for this purpose, but actually the body is the property of others. Indeed, the perishable body embraces the living entity and then leaves him aside. And we find this point made other places in the Bhagavatam, something Prabhupada talks about sometimes in his lectures. Kim yu vyavahitat patya daragara dana daragara danadaya rajya kosha gajam atya Brityapta matapasyada. Since the body itself is ultimately meant to become stool or earth, what is the meaning of the paraphernalia related to the body, such as wives, residences, wealth, children, relatives, servants, friends, kingdoms, treasuries, animals, and ministers? They are also temporary. What more can be said about this? So the summary of this section of verses is that bhakti is easy and natural, which Prahlad Maharaj has talked about before, bringing unlimited bliss beyond Brahman Nirvana. So here Prahlad Maharaj is talking about how much happiness one can get from bhakti, whereas material enjoyment is difficult, temporary, and brings the opposite of what we desire. So basic questions that we have that are answered in this section are, what is the most essential for performing bhakti? What are the symptoms of spiritual advancement? And what should be our attitude toward material pleasure and endeavor? Okay. The themes here are that bhakti is easy, bhakti is ecstatically blissful, and our body and everything related to it is temporary and will bring us the opposite of what we desire. Okay. Our first section is just verse 32 on its own. So here Prabhupada focuses on the first line of the verse. So the first line of verse 32, scrolling back up here, was Hari Sarveshu Bhuteshu. I can put that in chat. So here is the first line of the verse. It sounds like it says Hari is all living entities. And Prabhupada says that it's not that Hari is all living entities, but that Hari is in the heart of all living entities. Of course, Achinta Beta Beta Tattva, all living entities are Vibhinansa avatars of the Lord. So in one sense, the Lord is all living entities, and all living entities are the Lord. In another sense, it's not. So although our philosophy is Achinta Beta Beta Tattva, that we are all one with and different from the Lord, Srila Prabhupada focuses his preaching on the difference. Generally, some exceptions. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada will focus his preaching on the oneness, but generally he focuses on the difference, and sometimes he talks about both. And the reason he focuses on the difference is that impersonalism and Mayavad philosophy have become very prominent at the present time, and as in his pranam mantra, Nirvasesha Nirvadi Paskacha Desatarane, that Prabhupada specifically wants to defeat impersonalism and voidism. That's not everything, just like Paskacha Desatarane, he's delivering the Western countries. Prabhupada also is interested in delivering countries that are not considered Western, like Japan and China, which are not at all considered Western countries. They talk about, people in Japan will talk about the West as something very different from them, even though Japan is a very developed country. So Russians don't consider themselves Western. People in African countries don't consider themselves Western. And South America, although it's in the Western hemisphere, generally doesn't consider itself Western. So the fact that Prabhupada's delivering the Western countries doesn't mean he's ignoring the rest of the world, and the fact that he's preaching against Nirvasesha Nirvadi doesn't mean that he's ignoring the oneness. But Prabhupada wants to focus on the difference as a way of bringing back balance to our understanding. All right, so in verses 30 to 31, we had the activities of bhakti, if any of you remember from Saturday. So activities of bhakti mentioned in 30 to 31 were serving a bona fide guru with faith and devotion. Here, I'll just capture this and put it. This is from 30 to 31. Otherwise, I read it and someone says, what did you say? Okay. So that was from That was from 30 to 31. And really continuing, honestly, this 32 should have been put with 31. It shouldn't have been separated like that. But anyway, Hare Krishna. So the further activities of bhakti that are here in text 32 are these. So remembering the Lord as the Paramatma in the core of everyone's heart and respecting all living entities according to their position or manifestation. So we show respect to all living entities, but the way we manifest that depends on what is their situation. So I don't show respect to a caterpillar who's eating tulsi the same way I show respect to an advanced Vaishnava in the human body. But I have respect for all living entities. And this is a repeating instruction from Prahlad Maharaj and in general in the Shastra. We have to respect all living entities. We have to be merciful to all living entities. One cannot advance in any spiritual discipline at all if one is not kind to others. It just won't work. You cannot worship the Lord and be cruel to others and think that you're going to become a spiritually advanced person. The lowest Kanistha Adhikaris behave like that because they're very much into sectarianism. But it's, and everyone knows it's the opposite. I mean, it's one of the main criticisms materialists have of religionists is their violent sectarianism and their violent self-righteousness and their violent judgmentalism. And it's just, it's incompatible. And as I say, even materialistic persons know that it's incompatible. And they'll say, that's not religiousness. Okay, the next section of verses is 33 to 38, where Prahlad Maharaj describes the advanced stages of bhakti. I mean, one might reasonably ask, well, Prahlad Maharaj, you've been condemning material endeavor. What's the result of spiritual endeavor? Why should I try for that? And so in 33, he says that he gives results of bhakti. Secondary results is that one can cut down the influence of lust, anger, greed, illusion, and jealousy. The Sanskrit is nirjita, sadvargai, the 6 enemies, which are defined differently in different places. Sometimes nirjita, one can become victorious, jita, like jaya. And this means cessation. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says that what this means is cessation of the states of intelligence, which was stated in verse 28. So the wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep cease to be the experience of the soul. I mean, it's not that the body doesn't go through those, but that the person no longer experiences them in the same way at all. The primary result of bhakti is one attains rati. And this is loving service, sam labhyate ratihi. So secondary result is getting rid of anartas and the dissolution of the subtle body. Primary result is rati. And in Srila Prabhupada's purport, he gives a progression. You follow the instructions of Guru and Shastra, stage of devotional service and unattached to possessions, follows strictly and learns to control his senses, and uses pure intelligence to become a lover of the Lord. Now, he relates this list to Anushraddha Tata Sadhu Sangaha, although he's definitely explaining this a little differently than is usually explained. In text 34, the Lord's activities are real and transcendental. It's Mayavad philosophy says when the Lord comes to this earth and does activities, those are all Maya, those are all illusion, that the Lord is ultimately just impersonal, and these activities are just illusion. But no, the Shastra says that the Lord's activities are real and transcendental, and then the devotee experiences the sattvika bhavas. Sattvika bhavas are involuntary expressions of love. There are generally 8 sattvika bhavas. Prabhupada translates this word in the Nectar Devotion as existential ecstasy. taking from the word sattva. By the way, this word sattva has nothing to do with sattva guna. And Prahlad Maharaj is describing some of these sattvika bhavas. On a material level, we can understand a sattvika bhav. So, you see a good friend of yours that you haven't seen for 5 years, and you don't intentionally smile. You just it happens. It happens on its own, and your hairs may also stand on end. You may cry, and this is not intentional behavior. It's actually involuntary behavior. You might faint. If someone came back from war, you thought they were dead, and then they come back and you see that they're alive. You were told they were missing in action, presumed dead, and then they come back alive after 20 years and you may faint. Verse 35, the devotee cries out the Lord's name and offers respect to all living entities. So these are symptoms of advanced devotion. An advanced devotee doesn't care about social norms and may appear crazy to others. Prahlad Maharaj demonstrated this when he was very young. We don't find in the Shastra and in historical records that devotees behave like this generally. I mean, even Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he never behaved like that during Chaturmasya when the devotees from Bengal were visiting. He was much more constrained, and he would behave like this in ways outside the norm, generally in the evenings around his intimate associates. He definitely had some little bit more public displays, but that was unusual. And we find, the Goswamis of Vrindavan, they're helping people with their marital troubles even, and they're guides for Dhira Dhira Janaprano, they're guides for the ruffians and the gentle in Vrindavan. So they're not just always acting like crazy people. We do have, of course, the Avadutas, Rishabdev at the end of his life, Maharaj Yudhisthira at the end of his life, Jed Bharat for his whole life, which is, again, unusual. So it's not that all advanced devotees are acting, erratically and eccentrically, nor is it that anyone who acts erratically and eccentrically is necessarily an advanced devotee. Okay, text 36. Anyone who constantly thinks of his or her position in one of the rasas has no material desires, and the physical body acts spiritually like a hot iron rod in the fire. So none of these activities are material. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says his mind and body ashaya akritihi conform to his contemplation bhava of this particular relation bhava, thinking I am his servant or I am his friend. So in other words, one's physical body and mind have become transcendentalized, and one is actually constantly functioning in one's spiritual identity. Now, important, such doesn't usually manifest externally. We have some of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates who would sometimes, on some occasion, they were men, but sometimes they would be in this ecstasy and they'd be walking around as if they were carrying a butter pot. But that was unusual. Or during a festival, they'd all play at being cowherd boys and things like that. But not like the Prakrita Sahajiyas, who think that with your external physical body, you should be acting like it's a spiritual body in the sense that they're men and they dress up like women and say, well, we're dressing up like gopis now. So that's not what it means. That's not what it means. That's just a disturbance. And we don't find such as generally done, right? Occasionally in some ecstatic mood. Just like when Lord Chaitanya, he got in some ecstatic moods where he acted like Viraha or he acted like Nrsimhadev. But anyway, it's a rare thing. It's not like Mahaprabhu's associates were going around wearing ankle bells and saris when they were men. And that's bogus. 37, Srila Prabhupada focused on Brahma Nirvana Sukham, to say that ultimately we want to take shelter of the personal form of the Lord. because Brahman realization may not be permanent. And service in one of the rasas is all pervading in its satisfaction. So we have many examples, even at the present time, of people who attain Brahman realization, but don't stay there because they want relationships. So somebody could stay in Brahman realization, but there's a risk of not staying. Whereas in realizing rasas, this is all pervading extreme happiness. As Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, commenting on verse 37, says there is natural happiness on seeing the moon, which gives bliss and good fortune by all people's eyes. But there are millions of times more bliss on seeing one's son, though he may be lame, blind, or deaf, which is a misfortune in everyone else's eyes because of one's possessiveness. So this is why Srila Prabhupada comments on the moon in his purport. So that love changes everything. We might say, oh, what a nice moon. Like right now, it's a full moon day. And the moon is beautiful, and you see the beautiful moon, and you say, oh, how happy. But you're so much happier millions of times to see your beloved child, even if your child is handicapped mentally or physically. And other people may look at the child and say, how unfortunate, and look at the moon and say how fortunate, but actually the happiness of seeing the child is greater because we have a feeling that this is my child. So some idea of the happiness of mamata, that Krishna is my son, Krishna is my beloved, Krishna is like that. 38, it's easy to worship the Lord because he's both within our hearts and our well-wisher. So this point keeps being reiterated by Prahlad Maharaj. And Srila Prabhupada says in the purport that it's harder to go to hell than to worship Krishna. You have to work harder to go to hell than you have to do to worship Krishna. I find that charming. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, there's no difficulty in worshiping a friend because of the presence of the Lord at all times in the heart and because of his affectionate nature, because of the process of hearing and chanting, which can be done at all times, since the ear and tongue are always present, without bothering to find ingredients from elsewhere. What is the difficulty? Okay, so Prahlad Maharaj has been talking about the glories of bhakti. Now he's going to switch back to talking about this contrast with materialistic life. So in 39 to 47, we're only going up to text 44 today, but in 39 to 47, Prabhupada talks about that the struggle for material things is unworthy. So in 39 to 42, he talks about how everything is transient. Right? In 39, he says, trying to be economically successful on the level of individual society is a hard struggle, and we get only temporary benefit. Whereas reviving our relationship with Krishna is easy and natural, and then we don't need anything material. And in 40, that the higher planets are temporary and also impure. You know, we have so many religions where their description of heaven definitely sounds like the higher material planets and not the Lord's abode. You know, we're going to go there and hang out with our family, or, you know, I'm going to be in beautiful gardens, drinking wine, surrounded by, 72 women who love me. I always wonder where the women come from, like who becomes the women in this scenario. Okay, text 41, very important verse. The results one obtains are inevitably the opposite of those one desires. Now, such may not seem to be the case. It may not seem to be the case at all. You know, I want to, I don't know, what could I want? Okay, I want to have clean glasses. And so some devotees asked me what I wanted for a present. And so I got this far out thing to clean my glasses. And it works really well. I got exactly what I desired to get. Or I wanted some external speakers for my computer, and I got them years ago. And They do exactly what I wanted them to do. I'm completely happy with them. I have no regrets at all. And such is even true in at least some of my human relationships where, I wanted friendship with someone or, and I have it and it's very satisfying. So what does this mean? That if we're trying to be happy independent of Krishna, there's going to be 3 external results. And I've talked about this before. I actually saw Tamal Krishna Maharaj do this in the temple room as like a game. So you ask people, you say, can ask all of you. Maybe you can even answer me in the chat, although we don't usually use that chat in the first part of the class. So I'd like you to think about all the material desires you've ever had in your life. And think about what percentage of them you just didn't get. Just didn't get it at all. Some material desire. And think about what percentage of the material desires you wanted you did not get. A few people could put some answers in the chat. You just didn't get them. They never happened. Did we get some answers? Okay. I asked for a percentage, Mahalakshmi, not a thing. Okay, 30%. Anybody else? What percentage of the material desires did you want? About 20%. Okay. That you just didn't get them at all. Okay, we got 30%, 20%. Many tours. I'm asking you a percentage, Mittu Lakshmi. Take all the material desires that you had and give me a percentage of what you didn't get. I don't want some names of something you didn't get. 25%. We have another one. Okay. Anyone else? 20? Seems most people are hovering between 20 and 30. Sometimes I get 90% as answers. 40%. Okay. 20, 25. Well, you can still get some kind of a ballpark percent, Ajay Prabhu. All right. Now I'd like you to take the material desires that you wanted and you did get them. So the other, whatever, 70%, 80%, the material desires you had and you got them. What percentage of those were disappointments? That's you want something, you work for it, you get it, and when you get it, you're like, oh, this isn't what I really wanted. What percentage of your fulfilled material desires were disappointments? A percentage. Don't list the name, don't tell me, the pair of socks. What percentage were disappointments? Well, mostly, I said, give me a percentage. Mostly disappointed with. Was that 80% disappointed, 90% disappointed? Some people in this class who are sleeping or who never had any kind of material desire, and they should be teaching this class instead of me. Okay. Now I want you to think of, okay, but I've asked you a very specific question, Mahalakshmi. I don't need complicated answers. Some of you are giving these complicated answers. Okay, I'd like you to think of the things you wanted, you got them, and they were perfect. So I always like to give this example in my own life. We had a Toyota van. We bought it used. It was a converted cargo van. And you could put the seats so they could lie flat. The windows had screens in them, or I don't know what you call them in different parts of the world, like mosquito nets, something so the bugs couldn't get in. It got great gas mileage. I think it was like 40 miles per gallon. It had lots of room in the back for luggage. It maneuvered very easily. It was just like, we drove all the way across the United States with that vehicle with our 3 kids. It was just a fantastic vehicle. I'd say, especially for a family with extended travel, it was just perfect. So it was a desire I had. I got it. It was absolutely perfect. No disappointments at all. And then one day, my daughter and I were driving out to a store, and some young man was late for work, didn't stop at a stop sign, and he smashed the van. We didn't get hurt, but the van was finished. So, of all of the things you've desired that you actually got them. They did not disappoint you. They were perfect. How many of them are temporary? How many of them are temporary? You married the love of your life, perfect relationship. How many of them are temporary? Oh, Surudagora, I'm sorry. It's 100%, folks. 100%. They're all temporary. Either we lose them or they lose us. Even if you die with them, you don't take them with you. 100%. All right. How many material desires do we want them? We get them. They're perfect. And we get to keep them. Nothing. Nothing. Not one. We want them, we get them, they're perfect, we get to keep them. None of them. So therefore we can say that we get the opposite result to which we desire. We're working for material happiness. We're going to get 3 possibilities. 1, we don't get the happiness we want. 2, we get it and we don't like it. 3, we get it, we love it, it's temporary. Yeah, let's say you're sitting in a restaurant and you say, I'd like this thing on the menu. Oh, we're out of it today. We don't have it. You don't get it. Or they give it to you and you eat it and you go, oh, I don't like this. Not what I want. Or you get it, it's perfect, you eat it, and then it's gone. And all material desires are like that. What do we really want? We want Satchit Ananda Vigraha. That's what we want. And we're hoping that if I get if I get a certain education, I get a certain job, I get a certain relationship, I get a certain thing, I'm going to have that. But we get the opposite. We get frustration, we get disappointment, we get lamentation, we get increased desire. We don't get what we want. When we either don't get something, we get it and it disappoints us, or it's perfect and it leaves. And sometimes the last one is the most painful. The more perfect something is, the more we lament when we lose it. And so we're looking for happiness, and instead, although we get some temporary happiness in some ways from some things, ultimately we get distress. And this very profound statement that Prahlad Maharaj says in verse 42. A very profound statement. And I've heard this also from people who are from various people in various spiritual disciplines, why this is the case. He says, one is happy as long as one does not endeavor for happiness. As soon as one begins his activities for happiness, his condition of distress begins. We are already happy internally. We are the soul. We are naturally full of happiness. But as soon as we look for happiness outside of ourselves, as soon as we look for happiness as something external, then immediately we create this artificial sense of need. We create this artificial sense of insufficiency. Think about, if you already have something, there's something that you already have enough furniture, let's say, or you already have enough clothes, and you like your furniture and you like your clothes. And instead of being grateful, you look to buy new furniture and you look to buy new clothes. Or people in a marriage where instead of being grateful with their spouse, they start looking for another partner. And then as soon as one does this, one gets in distress. As soon as one does this, one gets in distress. If one's thinking, I got to have a better chair, I got to have a better wife, or I got to have a better something. Rather, one should be grateful with what one has. Now, that doesn't mean you never replace your furniture. It doesn't mean you never go to a different job. But this sense of, I have to look for my happiness, my satisfaction in something outside myself, that very mentality brings distress. All right, 43 to 44 is about our body, its possession, and its relations, which is also explaining at a kind of a more existential basis as to why what we just heard was true, why we get the result opposite to what we want, and why the very search for happiness obliterates our happiness. And this body isn't ours. It doesn't belong to us. We're trying to please something that's not only not us, but not even ours. The big argument in favor of abortion is that the woman can do what she likes with her body. In what sense is it her body? I mean, even, the baby's body is clearly different from her body. But even her body is not really her body. Prabhupada usually quotes, when he's making this point, usually instead of quoting 7:743, he usually quotes 10:10:11 when he makes this point. I'm going to put this in the chat. And this is a very famous verse from 10:10:11. While alive, does this body belong to its employer, to the self, to the father, the mother, or the mother's father? Does it belong to the person who takes it away by force, to the slave master who purchases it, or to the sons who burn it in the fire? Or if the body is not burned, does it belong to the dogs that eat it? Among the many possible claimants, who is the rightful claimant? Not to ascertain this, but instead to maintain the body by sinful activities is not good. So it's like we're spending all of our time, decorating someone else's house and paying for someone else's house. The body does not belong to us. Does it belong to our employer who can say, I want you to do this at this time? Does it belong to me? Does it belong to my father who created it? Does it belong to my mother who grew it in her body, nourished it with her body? Does it belong to my mother's father, my father's father? If somebody kidnaps me, does it belong to them? If I'm made into a slave, does my body belong to the slave? When I leave this body and my body's burned in the fire, does it belong to the people who burn it? If the ashes are thrown into the ground or a river, does it belong to the river? If the body is just lying out in the street and animals eat it, does it belong to them? It's my food. Who owns the body? Because I'm not this body, nor am I really the owner of this body. Therefore, any pleasure that's related to the body is going to be ultimately the opposite of what I desire and is going to pull me away from my actual happiness. And in 44, then he says, what's the meaning of our relationships and possessions? What does it mean? I'm sure you've all seen that meme of, a picture of a pile of ashes. It said, I tried the app that would show what I would look like in 40 years, and it shows a pile of ashes. I mean, when we leave this body and it's a pile of ashes, what is the meaning of our shoes, our car, our daughter, our son? our educational degrees. What is the meaning of it? This pile of ashes has an MBA. This pile of ashes has a 40-page long CV. The pile of ashes has a BMW or a Rolls Royce. The pile of ashes has so many loving children. What does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. And we've all had these things in other lifetimes and we've forgotten about. All right, one interesting point I want to bring out is in text 39. Srila Prabhupada quotes Madhya 22:107. Verse Prabhupada quotes often to say that Krishna consciousness is eternal and natural. Please do not be fooled by some people who are misinterpreting Madhya 22:107. Okay, so the answers to our questions are given here by Prahlad. So all we need for bhakti is to hear and chant about the Lord, realizing that he's our best friend and in our heart. And we can judge our advancement by our detachment from material things and by our spiritual happiness. And that spiritual happiness is already existing within us. It's a question of reviving it, and any attempt to gain happiness externally will result in frustration and distress. All right, we have our break. Please take an actual break. Give your body a break from a sitting position, and please give your eyes a break from staring at screens and get some movement. And we'll see you again in about 12 minutes. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hope you all had a good and real break. Okay, so in the very beginning of this class, I relisted the items of devotional service from verses 30 to 31. And then we had another 2 items of devotional service in 32. So please listen very carefully to what I would like you to do, and I'd like everyone to do this. So I'm going to put this in the chat. So without looking at the Bhagavatam or this chat or your notes, write down, not in the chat, as many of the items from verses 30 to 32 that you can remember. Then check what you wrote by looking at the Bhagavatam, what I put in the chat, or what I put in the chat at the beginning of class. And then do write in the chat how many you got correct. Please follow this instruction. And this is for everybody. I want to see this from everybody. So write from memory without looking as many of the items from verses 30 to 32 of Bhakti as you can. Do not look back up in the chat. Do not look in the Shastra. Do not look at your notes. Write it from memory. And don't write it in the chat, because I don't want other people to see it. Then you can scroll up and look at what I wrote in the chat. Look at the Bhagavatam. Check what you got. This is a very effective learning technique, by the way, if ever you want to learn anything. And then I want you to write in the chat how many you got right. So all I want in the chat, and I want this from everybody, is a number. So verse 30 to 31 had 8, and there were 2 in 32. So there's altogether 10. So I want you to write a number. So if you got like 3 out of 10, then write that in the chat. You got 7 out of 10, write that in the chat. You can't hear me? Well, I'm not saying anything. You're supposed to be doing something. Subhadra Radhika. I am silent because you're supposed to be doing something. And if you came back late from the break, please scroll up in the chat and see what it is you're supposed to be doing. It's good if you guys can turn your videos on, by the way. Otherwise, I don't know if you're there. So Ratnam, Prasant, Lastamuni, Murari, Asit, Golokavasini, Nardarishi. I have no idea if you're actually there. It's difficult to teach on Zoom to black rectangles. All right, Prema Manjari, 5 out of 10. Yay! Excellent. Ajay Prabhu, 4 out of 10. Very good. Murari, 5. Radha Govinda, 4. Excellent. I don't want you to list them. Abhirupa Malati, I want you to give me a number. Prasant, 3. Very good. 3 is the minimum I want you to get. Surita Gaur, 5. Excellent. Nilamani, 3. Very good. Very good. Abhirupa Malati, give me a number. Rangadevi, 3 out of 10. Excellent. Very, very good. 3 was our minimum I want everyone to get. Shakti Mata, 3. Excellent. I want to see if anybody got like 7 or 8. 3. Abhirupa Malati. Yes, good. You gave me a number. Thank you. Stuti Priya Radha, 4. Very good. So far, the highest is 5. Ilamaduri Lalita, 3. Anybody we haven't heard from yet? Check your list against the list. 6! Woohoo! Radhika's got 6. 3 of 10. Excellent, excellent. I went 3 was like my passing grade for this. All right, anyone we haven't heard from yet? All right, excellent. A little different list than the 9 process. Nardarishi, I was waiting to hear from you. And we got a 3. Excellent. Okay, no, I haven't heard from her yet. Okay. I'd like to ask you this question, and I'm going to put it in the chat so people don't say I didn't hear you. Okay, so Prahlad Maharaj talks about the apparent craziness of a devotee in verse 35. But usually we describe saintly persons as dhira, or sober. And we know the great devotees in our line generally appear to be more restrained and sober. So any discussion on this? Thoughts, discussion? It's not really a question. I'm just open. I'd like to get comments.
Well, Dhira really would mean that he is fully satisfied. He's not he's not involved in, he's not engaged in, like, free from dualities, let's put it like this. Happiness, distress, good, bad, I like it, I dislike it, all the kind of stuff. It's all material. This craziness is excitement, happiness for spiritual things.
Beautiful analysis. Anyone else have any comment on this? Ooh, Nardarishi. I like dear for others' benefit, crazy for Krishna. Ooh, well, we should have that like a motto, you know? That could be a motto. Be dear for others and crazy for Krishna. I like that. Put that as an entrance to a temple or something. For a Kirtan festival. Any other comments or discussion on this point? Prashant, yes?
One comment I have is that it's only the person who is going through the exuberance will know if it's for Krishna or if it's just because, like, I come from the New York, New Jersey area. Sometimes there are people just talking to themselves in the subway trains, and maybe a small percentage of them might actually be in this stage, and so there's a very thin line between a madman and mad for Krishna, I feel, and I would love your insight on how to know which one it is, because and also this can be subject to cheap imitation, so that's another problem.
Well, you're tying into a point that Lord Chaitanya makes. He says you can tell who's at the stage of bhava because he gives 9 symptoms of bhava. Like they're not wasting time, they're attached to the holy name. But he says you cannot tell who is at the platform of prema. And the reasons given for that is that those ecstatic symptoms of prema could be imitated. or they could be someone who's actually mentally ill. And they can be suppressed. So someone experiencing those symptoms may be experiencing them just internally, and you can't see them, or they can be imitated. And for those two reasons, you cannot tell. So God himself says you can't tell, so I can't give you a way to tell. You can certainly tell in yourself by how materially detached you are. Yes. And Prema Manjari says most of the times the devotees can conceal them, but sometimes not. And Srila Rupa Goswami gives degrees of ecstatic symptoms, like, smoky and flaming, and talking about how many sattvic bhavs are present at once, one sattvic bhav, 2, 5, all 8, and to what extent they can be internally manifest, and to what extent the devotee actually is not able to control them. And in Christian history, there was Saint Teresa of Avila, who was considered to be taken over by the devil because she sometimes displayed these ecstatic symptoms. And she writes about how she was trying to be obedient. One of the vows of a nun is to be obedient. And she was trying to be obedient and stop having any of these ecstatic symptoms, and considering that they were from the devil, she said, but I knew that they weren't of the devil. She said, I knew that they were actually, my love for the Lord. So these can also be misunderstood. And again, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't generally display these in public. But sometimes it can't be, helped. Sometimes it's so overwhelming. And so people don't imitate, yes. And I forget where I read it. I'm sorry. I told you all to be very careful that people quote their sources, and I can't remember where I read this. But that sometimes when the devotees can't control it, is Krishna's way of saying, this person's mine. And of course, Lord Chaitanya is begging for such ecstasy. And the Lord is so happy when he sees that we have so much love for him that we can either not control it or barely control it. Okay. Another difficult, thoughtful question I have for you. Anyone who just wants boring rote memorization should not come to my classes. It's a warning.
What did you say right now? I didn't get
I
it.
said, if you want boring rote memorization, don't come to my classes. Okay, so I'm having another thoughtful question here. There is sobriety and madness when it comes to spirituality. Wow, Pulastamuni. Yet in material life, most so-called sober people are in madness. Woohoo! That's really cool. That those people who are crazy for Krishna are actually the most sober, and those people who appear to be sober in material life are crazy because they think that they're this body. All right, my next item, very, very, very well put. That's like an expansion of the day and night. What's day for one is night for the other. Okay, here's a thoughtful question. So in the purport 236, Prabhupada says, when a devotee is completely purified, he becomes anyabhilasita sunyam. Okay, now this Sanskrit phrase, anyabhilasita sunyam, and as this is a Bhakti Vedanta class, so I'm assuming that at least all the regular students in this class have a Bhakti Shastri degree. And if you have a Bhakti Shastri degree, you know this verse. If you don't know this verse, you really messed up in your Bhakti Shastri class. So this is the definition, one of the definitions, Srila Goswami gives two, of pure devotional service. And this definition of pure devotional service is given in the section on sadhana bhakti. Yes, everybody remembers that from way back when you were so much younger and you were a Bhakti Shastri student, long, long, long ago. So anyabhilasita sunyam is the definition of pure devotional service given for the beginner, given for the sadhaka. And here Prabhupada's saying that you get there when you're completely purified. So this is one of the perpetual questions which we teachers get asked all the time. I also assume that most of you going for a Bhakti Vedanta degree are already teachers and preachers of Bhakti, that you're already giving public lectures on Bhakti. And if you're not, you should be, as part of getting these degrees. Don't just keep all your knowledge for yourself. So this is a question, if you are a public preacher, you will get asked repeatedly. How can someone who is a neophyte devotee, the definition of a neophyte devotee is that they have material desires. There are 4 kinds of neophyte devotees: one who wants wealth, one who wants freedom from suffering, one who wants curiosity, and even the jnani, you can say they have some personal desire to know more about the Lord for themselves. So how can a neophyte devotee engage in pure devotional service? How can a neophyte devotee do anyabilasita sunyam? Thoughts, discussions? Okay. Mahalakshmi, that's kind of meh, because I could still be serving a pure devotee with motive and it wouldn't count. If I'm serving a pure devotee because I hope the pure devotee is going to bless me and my backache's going to go away, and that's why I'm serving the pure devotee, then nah, not going to work. Good guess, though. Sri Radha Govinda, pure devotion begins with a desire to align with Krishna's pleasure, even if material tendencies still linger. The intention itself is a step towards purification. Through sadhana, surrender to Guru, following principles. Yes. To gain the Lord's mercy. Yeah, but to gain the Lord's mercy for what? Murari. I love your name, although it's extremely difficult to say. So, wanting mercy for what? Somebody can want the Lord's mercy so that they make a killing on the stock market, or they may want the Lord's mercy so their Aunt Sally gets rid of cancer. People can want the Lord's mercy for all kinds of things. By following the order of this pure devotee spiritual master, Goloka Nivasini, that's very similar to what Mahalakshmi said, and I'm going to say you can follow the order of the spiritual master because you want a big position in the Hare Krishna movement, so you'll always get the plates of Mahaprasadam. Shruti Priya Radha, yes.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Mataji. When we started reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, we came across this verse where it says, Nirmatsaranam Satam. So, the Bhagavatam is for the people who are non-envious. But then also we get to know Srila Prabhupada says that once you, if you just read it and you just go through it, you become non-envious because it is so pure that it makes pure. So devotion itself is so much potential that even though we may have material desires, but it is such that, eventually we come over them. We get to know that, we have to come over it. And the process is so perfect that Srila Prabhupada says that it drags the practitioner towards perfection.
So this resonates with what one person wrote me here in a private message with 2310, Akama Sarvakama Va Moksha Kama Udaradi. But what you're talking about is someone who's not initially engaging in pure devotional service, which is the same as 2310. They're not initially engaging in pure devotional service, but devotional service itself can purify them so that eventually it becomes pure devotional service. But how do you engage in pure devotional service from the beginning? You must be able to do it because Srila Rupa Goswami is teaching that you must be able to do it. So Saktimata says, mango is mango, whether raw or unripe. As long as the devotee stays in devotional service, he will come to the point of pure devotion. So that's actually 2 opposite things you're talking about here, Shaktimata. So the first thing you said is immature pure devotion. And the second thing you said is impure devotion that becomes pure. Different thing. So how do we get immature pure devotion? All right. And Sri Radha Govinda definitely so far the main one who really touched on this. Prema Manjari, a neophyte devotee who has Shraddha, serving the Guru with devotion and strictly following, especially the early morning program. I can tell you're Bir Krishna Swami's disciple. That's his main emphasis is the early morning program. Is qualified to practice pure devotional service. There's a difference between pure devotional service and a practice of pure devotional service. Okay, so what I'm hearing from you, Premanjari, is you're talking about the adhikar for practicing pure devotional service, which Rupa Goswami gives as degrees of faith in Guru and Shastra and faith and knowledge of Shastra, because VIHE Bhakti is based on Shastra. So that's eligibility for pure devotional service, which is a little different. Okay, Narada Rishi, you're echoing what Sri Radha Govinda said, that it's a question of intention. Yes, Ratnam, if you have the greed, it can be possible. Yes, it's the intention. And someone else said it, but I forget who. My apologies. I try to grab everything. As you can see, I'm pretty good at multitasking, but I do have my limitations here. So if I want to serve Krishna without material desires, see the difference between the sarvakarma person who's worshiping the Lord for material desires, they don't even have an intention or goal to get free of material desires. If you can think of what is most likely, haven't done a scientific study, but most likely the majority of people who go to places of worship, whether they're Hindu temples, whether they're Hindu temples of God, or whether they're Hindu temples of demigods, or they're Buddhist temples, or they're Jewish temples, or they're Christian churches, or they're Muslim mosques, or Baha'i temples, or any of the other plethora of religions in the world. And they're like, my dear Lord, however they understand the Lord, my dear universe. We have all these spiritual people who are praying to the universe to manifest things. My dear Supreme, my dear Controller, however they, please give me a red sports convertible car. And they may have devotion. They may say prayers. They may follow a guru. They may burn incense, blah, 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 blah. But they have no intention, no desire, no goal of pure selfless love. That's not their goal. It's not their purpose. They're not lighting their incense, lighting their candles, saying their chants, going to a sacred place, going to a place of worship for that. They're wanting a happy material life. That if I serve God, he'll give me a happy marriage, he'll give me healthy children, he'll give me enough money to live nicely, he'll give me good food to eat, he'll give me comfortable clothes to wear. That's demigod consciousness. That is a Sakama devotee. And think about, okay, when someone deals with us, if somebody can be very nice to me and respectful and even worshiping me and praising me and serving me with a lot of devotion because they want something from me. And if the relationship goes on and on and on and they don't get what they want, they will stop the relationship. Or if they get what they want, they'll stop the relationship unless they want it over and over again. Like if you go into a shop and you want something and they say, we don't have this, you leave the shop. Or if they say, we have it, you buy it and you leave the shop. So that's not pure devotion. It's devotion. It's devotion. It is devotion and it is service. You're doing service. You have devotion. You're exhibiting some devotion, but it's impure. So if one's goal is, if one can say to the Lord, my dear Lord, I don't know what to do. Right now, I really want a red sports car with a convertible top. And I'm thinking that's going to make me happy. And I can't get this desire out of my mind. So, my Lord, because you're my master, I'm bringing this desire to you. Do whatever you want with it. Get it out of my heart. Or give me the car and help me use it in service. I leave this desire at your lotus feet. And what I really want is just love. I really just want pure love. I at least want pure love. That is an unripe mango. That becomes a mango. So that's pure devotional service in practice. Yes, Ratnam.
Hare Krishna, Mother. Mother, there's one question actually. I see that Krishna only sees the greed in the devotee. He doesn't see whether he's a saint or a sinner. He doesn't see what our background is. He only worried about who is greed, then he will grant everything. That's what I heard. Is it correct, Mataji?
Grant everything.
Yeah, he sees only our greed, whether we greed. He doesn't see whether we are sinner or saint.
Well, I don't think there's things that Krishna doesn't see. So I don't think that you mean that literally. Krishna sees our attachments. He sees whether we're sinners or saints. He sees all of those things, but his what he focuses on is whatever actual devotion is there, even if it's like we were talking the other day, pretend devotion, the demons who are pretending to be devoted so they can try to kill him. So Krishna like fans whatever spark or semblance of a spark there is, and he's grateful for anything. But that's because he's full in and of himself, and he's not threatened by anything. So, but no, he sees everything. Believe me, he sees our material attachments. He sees our hypocrisy. He sees our moments of greed interspersed with our moments of lethargy. You know, he sees all of that, but he's most interested in the greed. You know, and just like as a teacher. So the best way I'm going to get all of you to learn is to encourage you when you get things right. I may still see when you get things wrong, and I have to point that out to you because learning what something is not is also important. But the main thing that I want to encourage is, you know, people who are actually interactive, people whose picture is up on their video, that it's not just a picture of their refrigerator, and, you know, people who are present, people who are engaged, people who are trying to understand, want to encourage that. And if people ask questions, even if the question shows they didn't understand, they're still asking, you know, you want to take the positive and encourage it. That doesn't mean that I don't see the negative, and it doesn't mean that I don't point out the negative, because that's part of the process. I also have to say, no, this is not the right answer. You know, I can't just ignore wrong answers if I want people to progress. That's not going to, it's not going to work. Then you're going to walk away with some misconception.
Yes, Mother. My main point is he doesn't see whether saints or sinner. So only the greed, which is very important. That's what I meant. Greed is
but
more.
he does also see the other.
Yeah.
Therefore,
Okay. Sure.
you know, I mean, and it's not that doesn't matter. It does matter. I mean, we have these opposite verses where Krishna says, Apichat Suchiracharo. Krishna says, even if you're the greatest sinner of all sinners, you can cross over the ocean of material obstacles by my grace. But he also says, only those who are but on pious activities in this life and in previous lives can attain to devotional service. If Krishna didn't care about sin, Prabhupada wouldn't have us vow to follow these four related principles. He obviously cares. It's not that he doesn't care. First of all, sinful activities are going to make it very difficult for us to be engaged in devotional service. Devotional service is possible for anyone, even who's doing sinful activities. Like Prabhupada said, the drunk can meditate on how Krishna is the taste of his alcohol. So even the person drinking alcohol can make spiritual progress. But sinful activities are going to greatly impede our spiritual progress. They're going to be blocks between us and Krishna. Sinful activities, by very definition, are things that are opposed to spiritual consciousness. So if we're doing something opposed to spiritual consciousness, it's going to be difficult to develop spiritual consciousness. It's like it's going to become very difficult to be healthy if all you do is sit on your couch all day and eat ultra-processed foods. How are you going to be healthy? You know, if you only exercise for 5 minutes a day and you eat, you know, 1/10 of one carrot and all the rest of the time you're eating garbage, it's going to be very difficult. And the doctor is going to look at things holistically. At the same time, Krishna's focus is on the greed. Krishna's focus, what he's focusing on, what he's trying to nourish, what he's fanning is the sincere desire even of a sinful person. Okay, so you're saying greed, no, not negative, Prasant. This is greed in the sense of greed for Krishna, desire for, not negative greed. Thank you for asking that question so we could clarify that. Yes. Because Srila Rupa Goswami says the only price for pure devotional service is greed. And he says you should get devotional service by begging, borrowing, or stealing it whenever you can get it. Now, he was not talking about wanting to be as rich as, Jeff Bezos or something. He wasn't talking about that, that kind of greed. And thank you for asking. That's important. Please, anyone should ask if you think you hear something and you're not sure. All right. Okay, another thoughtful question. Prabhupada says in the purport to verse 38, if it's easy to worship the Lord, he says, and it's difficult to go to hell. So why do we make so many difficult and expensive arrangements to worship the Lord if it's so easy to worship the Lord? Prabhupada's saying, you have to make difficult, expensive arrangements to go to hell. You have to, set up a strip joint and however much it costs to go in those places. And you've got to, earn the money to go in those places. And you've got to work so hard to get the money to buy intoxicants, and you've got to work so hard to cheat and lie and steal. So why do we work hard to please Krishna? And I'm going to ask some people this time, I'm going to call on some people. Suridagor Prabhu. Suridagor, why do we work hard to please Krishna? Why do we make so many difficult arrangements to please Krishna? And Prabhupada says it's easy.
Hare Krishna, Madhikam Pranam.
Krishna.
Actually, easy things seems difficult and difficult things seems easy for us. Because when we enjoy material things, they just give sufferings only and we enjoy. But on the contrary, when we do spiritual services, they are easy, but they seems the most difficult.
Yes, we have it backwards. Like Rupa Goswami says that chanting appears hard if you have jaundice.
Yes,
All right. Thank you. Subhadra Radhika, why do we make difficult arrangements to worship the Lord? Why do we do complicated, difficult arrangements to worship the Lord? Subhadra Radhika, can you unmute? Subhadra Radhika, can you unmute? Yes, I'm talking to you. Subhadra Radhika, I can see you. Can you unmute?
Yes, Mataji.
Thank you. So if Srila Prabhupada says it's easy to go to hell and it's easy to worship Krishna and difficult to go to hell, why do we make difficult arrangements to worship Krishna? Now you muted yourself again. Come on, unmute and stay unmuted. Subhadra Radhika, can you please unmute yourself and stay unmuted? Thank you. I'm asking you a question.
Yes, Mataji.
Thank you. So Prabhupada says it's difficult. We have to work hard to go to hell. And it's easy to please Krishna. So why do we do difficult things to please Krishna? Why do we have huge festivals where we're spending so much money and buying so many flowers and cooking so many preps and undergoing so many difficulties when Prabhupada says it's easy to worship Krishna and difficult to go to hell? What's your answer?
Mataji, we are doing these all festival for the glorification of the Lord. We are glorifying Krishna. So the festivals are celebrated, and all the festival which is in our in ISKCONs. Basically, all the festivals are celebrated only to please Krishna.
So why does Prabhupada say that it's easy to please Krishna when it seems that it's so difficult? We're doing all these difficult things, Subhadra Radhika. So we're doing all these difficult things. Why does Prabhupada say it's easy? It seems really hard to me.
Because we do all these things with a pleasure. We enjoy doing this all because we feel whatever we do, Krishna is very happy. Krishna likes. So it's not at all difficult. Whatever we are doing, all the festivals and all the difficulty things we go into, flower arrangement and so many things. but that is our full mind is absorbed, our heart is absorbed in doing this all activity, Mataji. Because
Excellent.
the theme is we love Krishna.
Woohoo! There we go. I'm so glad I took the trouble to hear from you. You were worth hearing from, although it was a little difficult.
And when we love someone, nothing is laborious.
There you go. So I had so much difficulty getting you to unmute and speak, but it was such a pleasure to hear you, and therefore it was not actually difficult at all. So there we have
Thank
a
you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
nice. Next time I ask you, see if you can make not only the pleasure of it easy, but the process of it easy. That would be appreciated.
Yes, Mataji.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to have you do another list thing, folks. Another list, just like we did before. And I want everyone to do this. So Prahlad Maharaj listed symptoms of perfection. Don't look. No looking. The symptoms of perfection. And by the way, I also like the answers that you guys put in the chat to my last question, although I didn't respond to all of them because I was trying to get her to unmute. Okay, so the symptoms of perfection. Prahlad Maharaj lists a bunch of them. Don't look. Write from memory. And then look and check and then give me a number. Same thing we did last time with the processes. So this time it's the symptoms. Write from memory, check, and then give me a number. I'd like everyone to put a number in the chat. Okay, Ajay got one. Ajay, look over the list again on your own so that you can remember more of them. In which verse is this list? It's actually several verses. 33, 34, 35. It's quite a few verses. Actually, you could say it's also in 32. 32, 33, 34, 35, 36.
How many are there actually? Is it correct that there are 5?
It's in verses 32 to 36. Okay, let me count all the ones that are there. There's a lot of them.
I mean, if I understood the question correctly, it's the symptoms of the perfection achieved by a pure devotee. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
we had that as a homework question. So
Oh, you had that as a homework question.
yeah, so we were prepared at least.
Oh, I see. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I've got I've got 16.
Oh, okay. We have to redo the homework.
Definitely got 16.
The homework questions are in the folder, the Google Drive folder.
I don't think I have that. Yeah, sometimes it's a restatement. Yes, percent. There's definitely some repetition. No, for 16, I counted the cutting down of enemies as 1. But I might have added up the numbers wrong because I was doing it on the fly.
I got only 10 symptoms.
All right, well, you may have a better list because I was doing it on the fly. I hadn't done it in advance. Oh, good, 9, excellent. Okay, 6 is very good. Okay, so we're going to do a comparison together. This is in text 33. Okay, this is text 33. And we have here, Prabhupada's giving a progression. So he's saying the beginning of spiritual life is Guru Prasad Ashraya. Then Sadhu Vartman Uvartanam Sad Dharma Prichja. By following the Guru and the Shastras, the disciple attains the stage of devotional service and becomes unattached to possessions. Whatever he possesses, he offers to the spiritual master, the Guru, who engages him in Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. The disciple follows strictly and in this way learns how to control his senses. Then by using his pure intelligence, he gradually becomes a lover of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as confirmed by Srila Rupa Goswami, Adu Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sangha. In this way, one's life becomes perfect and his attachment for Krishna becomes positively manifested. In that stage, he is situated in ecstasy, experiencing bhava and anubhava, as explained in the following verse. Okay, I'd like us to try to figure out, this is not going to be so easy, but I'd like us to try to figure out how Srila Prabhupada is describing Shraddha to Prema here, because he's basically giving kind of an alternate description of Sadhu to Prema. Any thoughts about, again, this is for people, I assume you have your Bhakti Shastri degree and you've studied the Nectar Devotion and you've studied about Shraddha to Prema. So there's a short purport. Do you see anything here about Adu Shraddha? Anybody see anything about Adu Shraddha?
Hare Krishna. By following the instructions of Guru.
Is that Adu Shraddha? Or what stage of Shraddha to Prema would you say that is, following instructions of Guru?
Is it Bhajan Kriya?
Yes, that's Bhajana Kriya. In fact, you don't even find a Guru until Bhajana Kriya. Yeah. Do we have anything here of Adu Shraddha or Sadhu Sangha? Of course, it requires Shraddha. Yes, of course. The higher stages always encompass the lower stages.
Engaging in Shravanam Kirtanam certainly is Sadhu Sangha.
Well, it includes that, but Shravana Kirtanan with Guru is going to be Bhajana Kriya. I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see that Adu Shraddha or Sadhu Sangha is here. I'm seeing the Prabhupada starting with Bhajana Kriya.
Is it not in the previous verse, Mataji?
It could be, but
Where it says
just
one remembers and
let's take a look.
one should always remember. And
No, I don't see that as a progression. Maybe. But here Prabhupada's talking about a progression. So it seems to me that he's starting with Bhajana Kriya. All right. We have anything here that corresponds to a Narta Nivritti. Staying in Gurukula Sadhu Sangha. That's possible, Leela Madhuri Lilita. It's possible that just going to the Gurukula is Sadhu Sangha, although it's not mentioned here as a distinct thing. But that's possible. What do we see here as a Narta Nivritti?
Controlling his senses.
Controlling senses and giving
Unattached to possessions.
unattached to possessions and controlling the senses. Yes, that appears to be a Narta Nivritti. And where do we have Nishta? Any Nishta?
Lover of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Yeah, I think
Not
that's
intelligence.
Yeah, that love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead can start in Nishta. I mean, Rati generally starts at the end of an Archana Vritti and the attainment of Nishta, so that's possible. But what was the other?
Follows strictly.
Follows strictly. Okay. Okay, we could put that as Nishta. Anything else that might be Nishta?
Yes, becomes a lover.
Huh?
Becomes a lover.
Yeah, we just said that, Mahalakshmi.
Oh, sorry, I was
Just that becomes a
reading.
lover of the Lord could happen at the end of an Arjuna Vritti or in Nishta. Yes, that is true. But Narada Rishi, I like what you said, pure intelligence. I believe pure intelligence here is the most likely thing that refers to Nishta. We had strong faith. Mithu Lakshmi, we have strong faith? I don't see it. Mithu Lakshmi, where do you see strong faith? Does it see it?
I heard from one lecture, Mataji.
I'm asking you for this purport. I'm not asking you from some lecture someplace else that you heard from somebody. I'm asking you for this purport that I'm sharing with you. Come on.
What about Mataji attains the stage of devotional service and becomes unattached to possessions?
That sounds like kind of a mixing of an Arjuna Vritti and Nishta. It's kind of like the border, huh? Yeah? Kind of like a mixing. Mithu Lakshmi, can you look at this purport? I've shared it with you. I'm asking you to find Shraddha Prema here in this purport because Prabhupada is equating this list that he's giving in this purport to Shraddha to Prema. Okay, anything for Ruchi? Do you see any Ruchi?
Is attachment for Krishna.
Attachment for Krishna is going to be what? A Shakti. Yes. And then we see right after a Shakti, then Prabhupada talks about Bhava. So attachment for Krishna is going to be a Shakti. Does anybody see any Ruchi? Gradually becomes. Could be that the Ruchi is included in the gradually becomes. All right. Gradually becomes a lover. Yes, could be Ruchi. All right. One last quick question. This is a very easy one. If our body belongs to others and is ultimately just earth or ashes, and all of our possessions are in one sense meaningless, what should be our attitude towards our relations and our possessions? It's a very, 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 very easy question.
Is that based on some purport you're looking for an answer or just in general?
In general. And thank you for asking that. Just a duty. Oh, that sounds awful. Oh my goodness, that sounds terrible. Imagine saying that to your family member. My dear wife, my body is soon going to become a pile of ashes. And even now, my body doesn't belong to me. I have no idea who you are or what you're doing here. You have nothing to do with me whatsoever, but I'm going to take care of you as a duty. Not very good marital advice. Gratitude. I like gratitude. Everything belongs to Krishna. Yes. My body belongs to Krishna. Right now, it looks like a body. Soon it's going to look like a pile of ashes. But either way, it belongs to Krishna. Attachment to Krishna. Subhadra Radhika, you're answering the previous question. Nice answer, but it's the previous question. Opportunity for service, Sri Radha Govinda, yes. Love that is not blind or selfish, yes. Even though my relations and my possessions are temporary and not mine, still they're Krishna's energy. Therefore, Prahlad Maharaj just talks so much about seeing Krishna everywhere. Seeing Krishna that's in everything, seeing Krishna that's in everyone's heart. You could say, Sri Radha Govinda, that it's referring to all these wonderful verses of being kind to all living entities and being compassionate to all living entities and seeing Krishna everywhere. Yes. And Prabhupada writes in the third canto that the reciprocation of service and love is the ideal of household life. So there should be a reciprocation of service and love for devotional service with everybody, with our body, with others' bodies, with our possessions. Temporary play. Play your part joyfully with gratitude to Krishna. Yes. Very nice person. Very nice. Okay. So we have 5 minutes. If any one of you has any general questions or comments on anything that you'd like to bring up. Yes, Mahalakshmi.
Okay, so I have, when the students finish the studies in Gurukula, there is a tendency in them of feeling, of course, let's see what we understand for Gurukula, but there is a tendency to feel detachment and strongly, and also detachment from working to earn money. So if this understanding of that, if this feeling of detachment is so grounded, how are they going to maintain their families to please Krishna and serve Krishna?
Yes, we've had a problem like this in ISKCON, that we take these verses and we just say, you know, don't care about your family and don't care about earning a livelihood. And then because people have to pay their bills, they end up doing something that, how shall we say, that is not really very proper to earn their livelihood. You know, they do something that's not a real job, or they do something that's cheating. So the idea in the Gurukula is that Prabhupada says that in the second canto, that the Gurukula should be for training in the real values of life and specific training for a livelihood. So generally in the Gurukula, the students are being prepared to enter into Grihastha life. So they should be prepared not only with detachment, because they want to enter into Grihastha life the way Prahlad Maharaj is going to enter into Grihastha life, with all this philosophy, and to see their family members and their possessions to be used in Krishna's service, and to see their way of making a living should be according to their nature in the system of Varna Dharma. And then there's going to be some students in the Gurukula who are naturally not suited for household life. And those students should be trained to become vanaprasthas and sannyasis. So they should be trained to take some responsibility in the world for the mission of the Lord. And they should be trained to take as much responsibility as renunciates as people take in family life. And then there's going to be even a smaller number of Gurukul students who never leave the Gurukul, who just stay as perpetual students and do menial service their whole life in the school. And we see that most temples have, you know, 1 or 2 people like this. They never marry. They don't really take any responsible position in the movement. And they do some simple menial service, like someone who's perpetually in the brahmacharya ashram. Another thing to keep in mind, that it's natural for people in certain varnas not to have so much concern about making a lot of money. So only the people who are naturally in the Vaishya varna are going to have this insatiable thirst to make money, because it's their job to provide the wealth of the whole society. You know, Nanda Maharaj had 900,000 cows. I'm sure he did not need that many cows just to feed his own family, right? They're expansive. They have expansive desire for wealth. And those who are naturally in the Kshatriya Varna also have some expansive desire for wealth in a different way, so that they can make sure they take care of everybody in their kingdom. Those who are naturally in the Shudra or Brahmana Varna tend not to have that kind of desire. So someone who's naturally in the Shudra Varna has more of a desire for a comfortable life in terms of material things. They tend to want more like comfortable furniture and clothes than someone who's in the Brahmana Varna. But neither one of those people has much desire to make a lot of money. And if they're pushed to make a lot of money, it doesn't work very well for them. It's just not their inclination. Now, we do sometimes have instances in the Shastra of rich Brahmanas. You know, sometimes like a Kshatriya will give a Brahmana a village, which means not that the Brahmana was managing the village, because that's Kshatriya's job, but that all the tax money from that village would go to the Brahmana. And so you had some Brahmanas who were very, very rich, And some of the occupations of a Brahmana are to collect charity and distribute charity. So Brahmanas who are very rich would also fund a lot of things in charity. So all of that has to be taken into consideration. In our ISKCON, we do damage people by, whether in Gurukulas or in Brahmachari ashrams, with this concept of I would say, impersonal renunciation instead of yukta vairagya, and people get damaged by that. So that definitely happens.
What is impersonal realization?
Impersonal renunciation.
Renunciation, I mean.
Yeah, well, you just give up everything as Maya, and you don't see how to use things in Krishna's service, and you don't see how to use things according to your nature. Everything in the world is Maya. And that there's definitely an influence of that in some Gurukulas, not so many Gurukulas today, but in some Gurukulas, it's kind of an older problem. And in some Brahmachari ashrams, Okay, just a couple things in the chat, and then I can also take the two people who have their hands up. What's our personal advice to someone struggling in Krishna consciousness who feels overwhelmed with the process and stages? Burjan Prabhu I asked him once a question about myself in terms of the stages, and he said, forget about the stages. There were a number of classes that I heard in Bhaktivedanta Manor years ago. It was like a series. It must have been what was discussed in the verses at that time. I remember Hriday Nandamaraj talking about it, Shiva Ramaswamy, and quite a few other people talking about stages. And the analogies they gave, it's just like when you're driving somewhere. Normally, you're concerned with where you are immediately. Am I in my lane? Unless you're in India where nobody cares about being in your lane, but am I on the right road? How am I dealing with the traffic right now, this minute on the road? And periodically, you notice where you are. So I think most of us use GPS, and on the GPS screen, it will show you, ETA 15 minutes, ETA 10 minutes, ETA 8 minutes. Now, we're not looking at that constantly. We're not looking at that constantly, and we're not constantly looking at all the steps ahead. In fact, usually GPS is just showing you the next step. So we're not constantly looking at that. We're not constantly looking at the ETA, but every once in a while we want to check in with that. The whole reason we want to know about stages is so that we can act in our bhakti accordingly. That's the only reason to know about stages. And so we can decide with whom to associate. But Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has such a great description of this in Bhakti Loka in the Niyamagraha section, that the rules change and the behavior changes depending on what stage you're on. And if you try to go too fast, you're going to trip and fall. If you try to go too slowly, you're going to trip and fall. Kind of, again, like traveling on the road. If you go too fast, you're going to get into an accident. If you go too slowly, you're going to get into an accident. So you want to know what stage you're at. You just check in periodically, every once in a while. Okay, what stage am I at? So you can understand what's the appropriate bhakti for you. Yes, Nilamani Prabhu. It's already 9:04 here. We're already 4 minutes over, but if it's quick. Nilamani Prabhu?
All right. No, I was just wondering in this whole section, Prahlad Maharaj, who is like 5 or 6 year old little boy, is explaining this quite deep philosophy to other 5, 6 year old boys, right? And I was just wondering, Prahlad Maharaj, we can understand, got this knowledge and ability from Narad Muni, but how is it that these other 5, 6 year old boys could be even receptive to such deep? It's difficult for us, even in our stages, but how is it possible for other 5, 6 year old boys to even be recipients of this? As I was just
well, most likely, each of the children are accessing it up to a point according to their capacity, and that it will gradually manifest as they go on in bhakti. Most likely, because that's what happens with everyone. But as we're going to see, they start manifesting it externally, which is what causes Prahlad trouble. So it causes Prahlad a lot of trouble and causes Nrsimhadev to appear. So we're heading into that. But just judging by the general way things work, I would assume each one of them is assimilating it to some extent, and then gradually it becomes revealed to them as they do bhakti. But yeah, it's interesting, huh? What high things you can say to 5-year-olds. Don't ever underestimate kids. You know, they can understand some deep things sometimes. Ajit Prabhu, and then we're going to end.
We have time. One of the items in verse 31 is about meditating on Lord's lotus feet. What does
Okay.
that mean?
What does that mean? Well, it literally means that I'm looking at the deity, and I'm looking at a painting. These paintings in front of me don't show the Lord's feet, but I'm looking at a painting or deity, and it could be in my mind. It could be you could have the deity in your mind, and you're literally looking at his feet, and you're meditating on how maybe he has some rings on his toes. Although my daughter, who's actually, I think she still does, worn toe rings in India, she tells me a lot of the pujaris have no idea how to wear toe rings, and they put the rings on Krishna's feet so that there's no way he could walk. She tells me that the toe rings can only be on these particular toes and between this part of the toes. So when she's seeing the deity, she's really looking at the toe rings. And, you know, the Lord's ankle bells, the tulsi that's on the Lord's feet, any maybe decoration that's on the Lord's feet, the lines that are on the bottom of the Lord's feet, the dust so one can meditate on all these visual things. If any of you are not visual, and some people actually can't even make pictures in their head, one can meditate on the descriptions. The descriptions, hearing the descriptions of the Lord's feet, how soft the Lord's feet are. And then also Padasevanam, which is service to the Lord's lotus feet and meditating on the Lord's feet, is this broad area of bhakti. It's a very, very big area of bhakti. Padasevanam includes traveling to holy places. Padasevanam includes taking care of the Lord's paraphernalia. You know, there's one of my god sisters here that she loves to organize everything in the kitchen and everything in the deity room and everything in the boga room. And she says her favorite days are right after a festival when everything's a mess. She gets to organize everything. Padasevanam is also worship of Tulsi Devi and serving the devotees. So if we're meditating on serving the devotees, if we're meditating on serving Tulsi Devi, if we're meditating on serving the Holy Dham. So for many, many years, I'm not really involved anymore, but for many, many years, I was part of a group that was serving the Dham in Govardhan and Radhakund. And, you know, we're very much meditating on that and fixing up areas of the Dham. You know, picking up the temple is a dham too, you know, picking up the trash at the temple. So any of you who have your own deities or your own altar, even with pictures, how clean you keep that area. You know, do you make sure to clean up the incense ashes? Do you clean up the dead flower petals? You know, you're keeping it clean. If you've got a cloth on your altar, do you clean that cloth periodically? So that's also meditating on the Lord's lotus feet because it includes all holy places. And yet Mahalakshmi has such a nice meditation here on the Lord's lotus feet that she's put in the chat. If you could all take a look at that before we close out this session, and then you won't be able to see it again. What a beautiful thing. I mean, there's so many beautiful descriptions, how the Lord's toenails are so effulgent that when he rests his lotus feet on a jeweled cushion, the effulgence from his toenails kind of wipes out all the different colors of the jewels. So many different meditations. All right, what a lovely way to end. Thank you for asking that.
Thank you very much. Very beautiful.
Krishna willing, we'll see you all tomorrow. Any mistakes here, thank you for correcting them, and please ignore them. Anything good here is from Srila Prabhupada, Prahlad Maharaj, Narada Muni, Sukadeva Goswami, and all of our acharyas. And certainly not from me. Hare Krishna.